I found that I had the wrong Trunnion Seal in the Moss kit for the front end rebuild or whatever. They send you this Trunnion Seal, which is apparently for the new style replacement trunnions that have a tapered top. And I'm assuming that's not the case on mine. It almost looks like this would go over and around the lip there, which would be nice, but in the back here it's flush, so it doesn't work right in this area. So this is the one they sell for the original style trunnion without the taper, and it just sits there, I guess. But anyway, now I can finally start putting this back together. Assembling the front suspension. So the first step is to I already put these bushings in, and then also this brass bushing, and it's been reamed. And so I got the rebuild kit from Moss. These rubber band like things stretch over the nylon pieces, and then one will go on each side of the arm. That's stretched over the nylon, and then it goes on the bushing here. And now this end plate will go on. The book says to tighten these first before tightening this one. I did tighten this a little bit just to help hold things in position. If you line up these top wishbone arms, you see that one is a little shorter than the other, and that tells you how they interlock. So just fold these down. There's the view of them interlocked. And now this spacer just goes in there. I have these bushings pushed in here, one from each side. So 4 on each side of the car. And then I don't have this washer on yet because I don't want to clamp this in. I don't know the angle. I mean, it's supposed to be straight, I'm sure, but I'm just not sure I would hit it right with those splines. So I think I'm going to put the whole thing together on the car and then tighten this up. And after that, I can back it off and put the washer on. The book says to turn this all the way home and then back one full turn. But I can't get it all the way home because what happens is the brass or bronze stop hits that bracket. But it looks like if it didn't hit that bracket, it would bottom out quickly. So I went from that spot back one full turn plus that much, which I think is right. And of course, I greased it before I put it together. Now the steering stop is in. And the ball joint now assembled in here. This gets tight to like, I think 55 or 60 foot-pounds. I think it's going to be easier to do that once I have it mounted in the car. Of course, this upper fulcrum piece was supposed to go in there first. So stand by while I disassemble and reassemble. I struggled a little bit to get this bushing in around the shaft and inside of the arm until I put the silicone lubricant on, then it slid right in. The fulcrum pin is installed. It's concave as I look at it. I guess some people put it in the wrong way. And then the long bolts go in the back, and there's 2 threaded captive nuts for the front 2 bolts. So it really helps if you take the shock tower spacer thing out to put the nuts and lock washers on the bottom of the back 2 bolts. You're not supposed to tighten these until you have the car down with 2 people in the car to tighten it with the bushings in the right place. I'm not sure how much that really matters, but I'll put the weight of the car on it somehow and reach around there and tighten them later. So on the shackle, which is the shaft out of the trunnion, this goes on first, the thrust washer with a rubber band around it for a grease seal. And then after the wishbone goes on, another thrust washer inside of this guy. And this is outside to the nut this way. Collar goes in, it says. And this has got another rubber washer on it. I gotta put some grease in here. I'm gonna grease between them before I put that on. Okay, the first one's on. This rubber ring goes over a recess on the trunnion too, so that it holds in there nicely. Now I'll grease the shaft and put the trunnion into the wishbone. And now the thrust washer followed by this collar piece. And then a rubber boot goes over, and you can see a little recess here for the rubber too. Tightened this up and then backed it off 1.5, maybe it was 2 flats. That's the procedure they give to give you the correct end float in here. Then I have to tap this over with a 1x2 or something to push it back out. I wasn't really sure how this worked. There's a metal ring in here that keeps the bearing from coming out, and the seal is different than the replacement I got, but thanks to Chef Tush for clarifying that I do have to remove that and put the new seal in. So this is the new seal. The felt goes towards the center of the car, and this is the bearing I took out. And I read online, people recommend dry fitting this without the seal because the bearing goes up against that shoulder, but the seal is much thicker. And so when you put it on, you have to compress that seal enough to get the bearing in its right position. And so they say to put the hub on and count the turns or measure how far the nut goes on to get it to have the bearing be home. And then when you put the seal on, you want to go that far and then back it off. Same business on this side with the rubber band over it, and then pushed it onto the flange on the trunnion. And then back there is one of the nylon washers with the rubber band around it. And now I can put the wishbone on both sides here at the same time. All right, it's all torqued up. And now I have the spring pan, the rubber, can't think of it right now, the spacer deal, the spring, and another spacer there, and the threaded rod in there to put the spring in. And I torqued this nut for the ball joint, which I think I'm glad I had it in the car to do it. I was able to get a open end wrench up in here under the fender and turn it about 1 flat at a time before I had to re-grip. But I did get it torqued up pretty tight, and I got a pin in there. So that's set. Spring is in. I just have to take the threaded rod back out. It's not fun getting these back 2 nuts. So I'm not sure about this piece. I think the only intention is to cut you on this sharp edge, but it's bent like that. It's the same way on the other side. I thought maybe it's supposed to come straight down, but maybe somebody will comment and tell me the purpose of that or where it should be bent back. Shock absorber is in. It seemed easiest to have the shock compressed and then feed it up in there, and you could put a screwdriver in here and pry up the top to get the shaft through the hole up there after you get the bottom plates on. Those are not so easy to get lined up, but had to tap them in. I still have to put the cover on down here, but I'm going to wait for a minute until I get the car up higher to do that. So now let's put these pieces back on. Smiley face goes down, and this bolt is longer, has a nut on the back to catch this tab, and then the other two get behind the caliper here. And back together. These are annoying. These are from the Roadster factory, and they're not the hole centers are not quite right, so you have to bend it back to get the holes to line up. It's kind of cleaned up the bearings. These are the driver's side. One is made in England. The outer one is made in USA. And on the passenger side, I have made in USA for the inner larger one, and made in Germany for the smaller one. So obviously some of these have been replaced. I torqued the nut to 10 foot-pounds, and I backed it off 1.5 flat so the cotter key lines up, and I just marked the upward point on the nut so I can put it back after I put the grease seal in. Didn't notice it before, but the purpose of the smiley face is to clear the bottom of the trunnion there, and then when you turn the wheel, so that bolt or that nut can poke in. Brake caliper is in, so I'm pretty much done with this front suspension. I still have to hook up the tie rods, but other than that, job complete, I hope. Here's another nice moss part. Wrong size, of course. Bump stopper plate is on. Just the flat edge goes to the bump stop. Now I have to jack it up to put the bracket and the rebound bumper in. Doesn't seem like I should have to do this, but if I jacked it up, I couldn't get the rebound bumper in. So I had to hang some weight on there, and then I could get it in just barely cleared here, but enough I could tap those bolts in.